Most Colombians believe Pablo Escobar is long gone.
Pablo Escobar's life and career as a drug kingpin is well documented. But how much do you know about the circumstances surrounding his death and the chaotic nature of his funeral? Join us as we uncover the untold truths about the death and funeral of Pablo Escobar. The life of Pablo Escobar. Before we get into the details of his death and funeral, we have to talk about who Pablo Escobar was, and why he still fascinates a lot of people to this day, so much so that there have been so many successful movies and series based on his life. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia. Growing up in a modest family, little did anyone know that this young boy would go on to become the mastermind behind one of the most powerful drug cartels in the world, the Medellin cartel. Escobar's rise to power began in the late 70s when he started trafficking cocaine to the United States. He quickly realized the enormous profits that could be made in the drug trade and seized the opportunity with both hands. With his cunning business tactics and ruthless methods, he soon established himself as the kingpin of the cocaine industry, controlling an estimated 80% of the global cocaine market at the peak of his power. Escobar's success as a drug dealer can be attributed to a combination of factors. He was not only strategic in his approach, but also violent and merciless when it came to eliminating his competitors. His ability to forge alliances with other criminals, corrupt politicians, and law enforcement officials also played a significant role in his meteoric rise to power. Known for his charisma and Robin Hood-like image among the poor in Colombia, Escobar cultivated a public persona that portrayed him as a benevolent figure who used his wealth to help the less fortunate. His help came in many forms, including providing houses to the poor and building football fields for children in numerous rural communities. However, behind this generosity lay a ruthless criminal who was responsible for countless deaths and unimaginable suffering. His dispute with rival drug gangs, particularly the Cali cartel, defined a bloody chapter in the history of the drug trade in Colombia. Escobar's approach to dealing with competition was brutal and merciless, leading to countless deaths and massacres with a lot of innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. The turf wars between Escobar and rival gangs resulted in a wave of violence that engulfed Colombia in the 80s and 90s. Bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings became common as each faction fought for control of the lucrative drug trade. Escobar's willingness to use extreme measures to eliminate his enemies earned him a fearsome reputation that struck fear into the hearts of those who dared to defy him. In spite of his ruthless reputation, Escobar's vast wealth allowed him to live a life of luxury, with extravagant mansions, private jets, and even his own private zoo. He was known for his flamboyant lifestyle and willingness to spend lavishly on his family and associates. At the peak of his drug-dealing powers, Escobar was worth an estimated $30 billion, with his cartel raking in over $70 million daily, and was named one of the 10 richest people on Earth by Forbes. He made so much money that he purchased a Learjet for the sole purpose of flying his money, as automated teller machines were not yet around at the time. But Escobar didn't just rule the drug trade. He also had a tight grip on the judicial system and law enforcement in Colombia. Through a combination of bribery, intimidation, and violence, Escobar managed to exert influence over judges and police officers, ensuring they turned a blind eye to his criminal activities. Judges who dared to oppose Escobar were met with swift and brutal retaliation, often ending up dead or in exile. This climate of fear and corruption allowed Escobar to operate above the law in Colombia, knowing that he could buy his way out of trouble or eliminate any obstacles in his path. By controlling key figures within the legal system, Escobar ensured that he remained untouchable and beyond the reach of justice. Escobar's ambitions didn't stop at controlling the drug trade and the justice system. He also harbored political aspirations, seeking to legitimize his power and influence by entering the realm of politics. Escobar believed that by leveraging his immense wealth and resources, he could manipulate the political landscape to serve his own interests. In pursuit of his political ambitions, Escobar used a combination of bribery and violence to install allies in key positions of power, further cementing his control over the country. His ultimate goal was to secure a seat in the Colombian Congress, where he could wield even greater influence and protection from prosecution. And in 1982, Escobar would be nominated as an alternate member of Colombia's Congress. His success was short-lived as Minister of Justice Rodrigo Lara Bonilla investigated him and highlighted the illegal means by which he had obtained his wealth, forcing Escobar to resign 2 years after his election. A few months after Escobar's resignation, Lara Bonilla was found murdered. Escobar's brazen attempts to legitimize his criminal empire through politics ultimately backfired, leading to increased scrutiny and opposition from both within Colombia and on the international stage. These ambitions harbored by Escobar, as well as his well-known lavish lifestyle, would end up capturing the attention of law enforcement, not just in Colombia, but also from international agencies. This ended up being the beginning of the downfall of one of the most successful criminals of all time. Escobar's legacy continues to divide opinions. While some may view him as a ruthless criminal, others see him as a complex figure whose life and actions raise difficult questions about morality and power. Days leading to his death. The late 80s marked the beginning of the fall of Escobar as his criminal activities came under increased scrutiny. Law enforcement agencies, both local and international, had multi-million-dollar bounties on Escobar. At this point, he knew he had to constantly stay one step ahead of the law if he was going to stay out of prison. Escobar was a master of deception and secrecy, using a web of safe houses to keep himself hidden from authorities. These safe houses, scattered across Colombia, Mexico, and the United States, served as his temporary sanctuaries where he could lay low and plan his next moves. From luxury estates to remote hideouts in the jungles, Escobar's safe houses were strategically chosen to provide him with shelter, security, and anonymity. By the early 90s, Escobar was facing increasing pressure from the administration of President Cesar Gaviria, particularly after Escobar's alleged assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galen in 1989. In June 1991, Escobar negotiated a surrender to Gaviria's government in exchange for a reduced sentence and preferential treatment during his captivity. A law at the time prevented his extradition to the United States. As a result, Escobar was sentenced to the La Catedral, a luxurious prison he built to his specifications where he orchestrated his criminal operations from behind bars. La Catedral was a fortress of luxury, complete with amenities like a soccer field, a jacuzzi, and even a bar where Escobar and his henchmen could unwind amidst the chaos of their criminal empire. Escobar's time in La Catedral would be short-lived because the government decided to move him to a standard prison facility. As a result, in June 1992, Escobar fled his prison sanctuary. This led to a manhunt by the Colombian government with the help of the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. This same year, the Colombian government created a special police unit to deal with Escobar and his cartel, called the Bloc de Busqueda, or Search Block. Their first couple of encounters with Escobar's Medellin cartel did not go so well. They were left in the dust every time they came close to getting Escobar, and they had crucial members of the squad murdered by the cartel. But this did not stop the Search Block. Instead, they got assistance from the United States Special Forces, United States Army Intelligence, and members of the Central Intelligence Agency and the American Drug Enforcement Agency. With the reinforcements, the Search Block pursued Escobar throughout 1992 and 1993. As the pressure on Escobar mounted, the Colombian government intensified its efforts to capture him and dismantle his criminal empire. The noose was tightening around Escobar, and he could sense that his days were numbered. In a desperate bid to evade capture, Escobar sought refuge in one of his final safe houses, a nondescript apartment building in Medellin, where he hoped to hold out against the Search Block. Finally, on December 2, 1993, a day after Escobar's birthday, the Search Block tracked the drug baron to Los Olivos neighborhood in Medellin. The Search Block was able to converge on the house when Escobar was speaking on the phone with his son. Members of the Search Block surrounded the home while others stormed through the door. Alerted, Escobar and a bodyguard stumbled out a back window onto an orange-tiled roof. They were met with a hail of gunfire, and both fell from shots to their heads. Some experts claim Escobar's death was a suicide. According to the autopsy, Escobar died from a gunshot wound to the ear. The gunshot wound led to speculation that Escobar had committed suicide because Escobar's son Juan says that his father had taught him how to kill himself this way many times, particularly on occasions when they were hiding out and being chased by either enemies or authorities. He said it was a foolproof method to avoid the gruesome torture that would result from being captured by enemies like the Cali cartel. But the search block still takes credit for Escobar's death to this day. Reaction to Escobar's death. The death of Escobar was met with mixed reactions from the public. To some, he was a Robin Hood figure, a savior of the poor. To others, a ruthless criminal responsible for unimaginable suffering. In the poor neighborhoods of Colombia, particularly in Medellin, Escobar was not merely a drug lord, but a symbol of hope for the people who felt cheated by the government. His philanthropic gestures, which included building homes, schools, and even soccer fields, painted him as a benevolent figure in the eyes of those struggling in the shadows of poverty. To these people, Escobar was someone who went against the system of government oppression and won. The news of Escobar's death plunged these communities into mourning. These supporters often turned a blind eye to the darker side of Escobar's operations. They saw his actions as necessary evils in a world where the system was rigged against the poor. On the flip side, there were those who despised Escobar as a criminal mastermind. To them, he was nothing more than a ruthless drug lord who used violence and intimidation to amass wealth and power. His reign of terror, marked by bombings, assassinations, and widespread corruption, left a trail of devastation in its wake. To them, there was no justifying Escobar's actions or excusing the innocent lives lost in his quest for power. For these critics, Escobar's death was seen as a moment of justice finally served. They viewed it as a victory for law and order, a sign that even the most powerful criminals could be brought down by the forces of justice. They celebrated his demise as the end of an era marked by fear and violence, a chance for Colombia to move forward and heal from the scars of its turbulent past. As news of Escobar's death spread, relief swept through sectors of Colombian society that had been the direct victim of Escobar's violence and ruthlessness. Families who had lost loved ones to drug-related violence, law enforcement agencies exhausted by the relentless pursuit, and ordinary citizens tired of living under the shadow of terror felt a sense of justice served. To them, Escobar's demise was the end of an era marked by violence, corruption, and narco-terrorism. The reaction to Escobar's death was not peculiar to just Colombia. People in the United States of America had their opinions about the Escobar. While there was acknowledgement of the significance of dismantling one of the world's most powerful drug cartels, there was also reflection on the role of external factors, such as drug demand, in fueling the rise of figures like Escobar. The United States had been a major consumer of the drugs trafficked by the Medellin cartel. These mixed feelings towards Escobar can be seen in street paintings of him around Colombia. While some of them depict him as a hero or a savior, the others portray him as the devil. Impact on the drug trade and Medellin cartel. But the general public and their opinions were not the only things impacted heavily by the death of Escobar. The Medellin cartel never recovered from his death. And with his leadership gone, the cartel lost its strategic direction and unity. Without Escobar's iron-fisted control, internal disputes erupted within the cartel, leading to power struggles and factionalism. The once formidable organization began to crumble from within. The Colombian government, with the support of the United States, intensified its efforts to dismantle the Medellin cartel following Escobar's death. Law enforcement agencies targeted key figures within the cartel, leading to a series of high-profile arrests and seizures of assets. The increased pressure disrupted the cartel's ability to operate effectively, further weakening its influence and reach. As the Medellin cartel's power waned, other criminal organizations saw an opportunity to fill the void left by Escobar's demise. Competing drug cartels, such as the Cali cartel, the Norte del Valle cartel, and the paramilitary groups, vied for control of the lucrative drug trade routes and markets previously dominated by the Medellin cartel. The Cali cartel, in particular, emerged as a formidable rival to the Medellin cartel. The Cali cartel's sophisticated operations and diversified business ventures set it apart from its more brutish predecessor. While the Medellin cartel relied on violence and intimidation to maintain control, the Cali cartel employed a more nuanced strategy, relying on bribery, corruption, and political influence to protect its interests. This approach allowed the Cali cartel to operate in the shadows, evading law enforcement scrutiny and expanding its reach across the globe. However, it too faced increased scrutiny and pressure from law enforcement agencies. The Colombian government, with the support of the United States, ramped up its efforts to target the Cali cartel's leadership and dismantle its operations. A series of high-profile arrests and crackdowns weakened the cartel's grip on power and exposed its vulnerabilities, leading to its eventual downfall in the late 90s. As the Cali cartel faltered, a new generation of criminal organizations emerged to stake their claim in the lucrative drug trade. Smaller, more nimble groups known as bandas criminales, or backrims, rose to prominence, filling the void left by the larger cartels. These groups, often composed of former paramilitaries and mercenaries, operated with ruthless efficiency, using violence and intimidation to assert their dominance in the underworld. With the emergence of multiple cartels fighting to take over Escobar's empire, the Colombian government had to double their efforts to not just crack down on drug dealers, but to show the people of these poor communities that the drug trade was not the only way to make a living. But while all of this was going on, the government and Escobars family had to deal with the burial of the former leader of the Medellin cartel. Escobar's funeral. Escobar died on December 2, 1993, and was buried the very next day on December 3, 1993. Escobar's funeral was a spectacle unlike any other, and what happened at Escobar's funeral would shock you. As news of his demise spread, thousands of people descended on his hometown of Medellin to pay their respects, while others watched from afar, fascinated by the larger-than-life figure who had terrorized Colombia for so long. The funeral itself was a private affair, with only close family and friends in attendance. However, outside the funeral home, the atmosphere was tense and emotional. Supporters of Escobar were seen crying and mourning, while others were seen celebrating his death. The streets were lined with mourners who tried to catch a glimpse of Escobar's casket as it made its way through the city. And when it got to the mortuary, people pushed so hard to see Escobar's coffin that they shattered the windows of the mortuary. The drug baron's family was unable to open the doors of the car because of the crowd on the street. Escobar's wife, son, and daughter had to turn back and missed the burial, according to radio reports. People yelling, "Long live Escobar!" tried to break through a line of police into the cemetery. Army troops had to help control crowds so Escobar's body could be taken to the gravesite. The burial was hasty, and the Catholic priest in charge of the procession tried saying a few prayers, but gave up as the crowd pushed and shoved. Escobar's mother, Hermilda Gaviria, and several of his sisters watched quietly as the body was lowered into the ground. The Colombian police were on high alert, as they feared that Escobar's death would lead to retaliation from his associates, and the funeral was heavily guarded by the police, with roadblocks and checkpoints set up in the surrounding area. But just as the police suspected, the funeral ceremony ended up being one chaotic incident after another. Reports emerged of clashes between rival factions within the Medellin cartel, as various factions vied for control in the wake of Escobar's death. The atmosphere was tense and charged with uncertainty, reflecting the power vacuum left by the fall of Colombia's most notorious drug lord. This was followed by instances of violence and unrest, as rival gangs clashed and law enforcement struggled to maintain order. Despite the chaos and instability that characterized Escobar's funeral, there were also moments of solemnity and reflection. For many Colombians, his death represented a chance to turn the page on a dark chapter in the country's history, to move forward and rebuild in the wake of decades of violence and corruption. The total attendance at Escobar's funeral was estimated to be 25,000, with people from all walks of life coming together to pay their respects. The The diverse crowd once again reflected the complex legacy of Escobar, a man who was both feared and admired, hated and revered. Politicians, celebrities, and ordinary Colombians all came together to witness the end of an era and to mourn the passing of a man who had shaped the country in ways both profound and devastating. This included the then Colombian President Cesar Gaviria, who had ordered the operation that led to Escobar's death. He was there to pay his respects to the victims of Escobar's criminal empire, which had caused so much violence and suffering in the country. Other political figures, eager to demonstrate their commitment to the rule of law and the fight against organized crime, made a show of attending Escobar's funeral, using the event as an opportunity to signal their resolve in the face of lawlessness and corruption. As the crowds dispersed and the city slowly returned to normal, the echoes of Escobar's funeral lingered in the air, a reminder of a turbulent and troubled past that continues to haunt Colombia to this day. The end of one chapter had come, but the story of Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel remains etched in the collective memory of a nation forever changed by the tumultuous events of the past. Escobars Family. After the chaos of the funeral, the spotlight shifted from Escobar to his surviving family. His family had to grapple with his legacy as a drug kingpin. With Escobar no longer at the helm, the family faced challenges on multiple fronts, from navigating legal issues and public scrutiny to securing their future in his absence. But Escobar's legacy casted a large shadow over the family and ultimately shaped the outcome of their lives for years to come. Escobar's widow, Maria Victoria Henao, known as Maria Isabel Santos Caballero after his death, and their children faced a world that was both fascinated and repelled by their connection to the notorious drug lord. They sought to distance themselves from Escobar's notoriety, attempting to carve out a new identity separate from his criminal past, but the shadow of Escobar was inescapable. In 1999, Maria and her son were arrested and charged with theft and money laundering. The investigation suggested that Maria was involved in drug trafficking and that she had details of Pablo's business. She denied all the allegations and stated that she was just Pablo's wife and had nothing to do with his illegal business. After 15 months, Maria and her son were released due to insufficient evidence. Maria and her children had to relocate to Argentina after the death of Escobar. She was forced to continually flee from place to place to keep her family safe. This constant running from enemies of her dead husband led to her changing her name. Her children also followed suit. Juan became Sebastian Marroquin, and Manuela became Juana Manuela Marroquin Santos. The family's attempts to move on and lead quiet lives away from the public eye were often thwarted by the persistent interest in Escobar's story. Documentaries, books, and films continued to explore his criminal exploits, forcing them to confront their connection to one of the most infamous figures in modern history. As if that wasn't enough, Escobar's gravesite and his former properties took on a new role as unexpected tourist destinations, drawing visitors from far and wide curious about the man behind the myth. Escobar's gravesite, located in the upscale cemetery Jardín Montesacro in Itagüí, Medellin, became a site of pilgrimage for some and morbid curiosity for others, with tourists flocking to pay their respects or to simply catch a glimpse of the final resting place of the infamous drug kingpin. The gravesite itself was a modest mausoleum, a stark contrast to the opulence and extravagance that had defined Escobar's life. Visitors would leave offerings and tributes, while others snapped photos or simply gazed in silent contemplation at the final resting place of a man whose name had become synonymous with violence and crime. Escobar's luxurious estate, Hacienda Napoles, also became an unexpected tourist attraction, drawing visitors eager to catch a glimpse of the opulence and excess that had once been synonymous with Escobar's empire. The magnificent estate, complete with a private zoo, served as a reminder of the extravagant lifestyle that Escobar had enjoyed during his reign as the most powerful drug lord in the world. Tourists flocked to Hacienda Napoles to explore the ruins of Escobar's former empire, wandering through the overgrown grounds and marveling at the remnants of a bygone era. The transformation of Escobar's gravesite and properties into tourist attractions sparked controversy and debate. with some arguing that it was inappropriate to glorify a man responsible for so much death and destruction. Others, however, saw the sites as opportunities for reflection and education, allowing visitors to confront the dark chapter of Colombia's history and to learn from the mistakes of the past. How Colombia moved on. After the reign of Pablo Escobar, Colombia faced a challenging journey towards moving on from the dark shadow of the notorious drug lord. The country had been deeply scarred by Escobar's criminal empire, but in the years following his death, Colombia embarked on a path of healing, rebuilding, and transformation. One of the key steps in Colombia's journey towards moving on from Escobar was the dismantling of his criminal empire and the dismantling of his Medellin cartel. Through years of dedicated efforts by law enforcement, government agencies, and international partners, the structures that had enabled Escobar's reign of terror were gradually dismantled, disrupting the flow of drugs and money that had fueled his criminal enterprise. The fight against drug trafficking and organized crime became a top priority for Colombia, as the country sought to root out the remnants of Escobar's influence and build a safer and more secure future for its citizens. At the same time, Colombia embarked on a journey of reconciliation and healing, seeking to address the wounds left by decades of violence and conflict. The country invested in programs aimed at promoting peace, reconciliation, and justice, offering opportunities for former combatants to reintegrate into society and for communities to heal from the trauma of their past. Initiatives such as the peace agreement with the guerrilla group signaled Colombia's commitment to building a more peaceful and inclusive future, forging a path towards reconciliation and unity after years of division and strife. Colombia's efforts to move on from Escobar's legacy were also reflected in the transformation of its cities and communities. Medellin, once synonymous with violence and crime during Escobar's era, underwent a remarkable urban renewal, with investments in infrastructure, education, and social programs helping to revitalize the city and create new opportunities for its residents. The city's innovative public transportation system, state-of-the-art libraries, and vibrant cultural scene became symbols of Medellin's resilience and transformation, showcasing the city's potential for growth and prosperity beyond its troubled past. Education also played a key role in Colombia's journey towards moving on from Escobar. Schools, universities, and educational institutions became battlegrounds in the fight against ignorance, violence, and extremism, as teachers and students worked together to promote critical thinking, empathy, and social responsibility. Educators developed innovative programs aimed at teaching young Colombians about the dangers of drug trafficking, the importance of peace and reconciliation, and the value of democracy and respect for human rights. Through education, Colombia sought to empower its citizens to shape a future that was free from the shadows of its past, creating a new generation of leaders committed to building a better tomorrow. Today, Colombia stands as a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and collective action in overcoming the darkest chapters of its history. The country's journey towards moving on from Escobar's legacy continues to inspire hope and optimism, showcasing the transformative power of unity, peace, and progress. Colombia's ongoing efforts to build a more inclusive and sustainable society reflect the resilience and strength of its people, who have shown that even in the face of adversity, a brighter future is possible through perseverance, solidarity, and a shared commitment to building a better tomorrow, all of which would not have been possible without the death of Pablo Escobar. Thank you for watching this video. We will see you in the next one.